Welcome everybody. So today's time is for Kevin Parker. He is an entrepreneur here in Staten Island, a life coach. He's going to be sharing about very personal stories and what he decided to do after traumatic events. Stay tuned.
I've been working with kids for about 3 years now, but it all started with an issue that I dealt with in my life. I grew up, I had great parents, father, mother. I played sports my entire life. I was an honest student. I had a ton of friends. Everything was really great. And then right after high school, I got into a head-on collision with a bus, and I injured my neck and my back, and it was devastating. It completely destroyed me. I didn't know how I was going to cope with it. And then I went to a few different doctors, a few different therapies and everything. Nothing really was working all that well. So one of my friends said, go to a pain management doctor and they'll help you out. They'll give you a medication that'll help you. And I smoked pot and I did things like that when I was in high school, but never really dabbled in heavy drugs. And I started taking these painkillers and they started really helping me out. And they started helping my back, and I started moving around and being able to play sports again. And they were working for a certain amount of time, and then eventually the effects of the medication and the painkillers just wore off, and I developed an immunity or a tolerance to these pills. And then I went back to the doctor and I got a higher dose, and then that worked for a little while longer, and then that stopped working, and then I got a higher dose and a higher dose, and before I knew it, I was absolutely hooked. I dropped out of college because I just couldn't sit still anymore. I couldn't bear with the pain, and I was addicted to these pills. I lost my job. I as a career worker, I was a concrete laborer in a union. I started working there, started making a lot of money, but eventually the doctors kicked me off, and I started spending about $700-800 a week just to pay for my pills so I can get to the day. I pay $700 a week just to get my pills, just so I can go to work, just so I can afford my pills, and it became a terrible vicious cycle that I was stuck in, and I was completely trapped. I was a slave to my addiction. There was nothing I could do about it. I didn't even realize, but systematically I lost everything in my life to these drugs, and I didn't even see it happening. Every girlfriend I ever had through that period left me. I lost my apartment. I lost my car. I lost my career. I lost every job that I ever had. I lost my dignity, my self-respect. Everything was just stripped away from me before I even knew it. And I just turned around, I looked around, and there was nothing left. Eventually, I had to move back with my father, and he took me in. I started staying there for about 6 months, and a few months into it, he looked at me and said, "Kev, you got a problem. You're on drugs right now." And I told him, I was like, "I don't have any problem." I was in denial. Although I knew it was going on, I was still thinking I had control over it. He said, "Listen." He'd show me pictures of myself like nodding out at the bed and drooling. And I was like, and I'd make up excuses every time. I'd be like, I'm tired. I had a long day, this, that, the third. He'd show me these videos and be like, you're going to start a fire in the house or you're going to kill yourself. He's like, either you're going to get help, you're going to leave the house and you're going to leave for 24 months program, or you got to get out of my house. Me, I was being all prideful. I was like, listen, I don't need your help. I'm not messed up. I don't need it. I'm leaving. I went to my room. I grabbed my safe, a book bag full of clothes, a pair of shoes in the middle of November, put my safe on my shoulder, and I stormed out the house. And I walked to my friend's house about a mile in a tank top and shorts in the middle of November. I must look like a crazy person. So when I got to my friend's house, I told his mother that my family was being unfair. They kicked me out of the house. They hate me, this, that, the normal song and dance that typically happens in these situations. And she said, no problem. You can stay here as long as you want. So I got there, and that night she cooked me a nice dinner. We ate macaroni and cheese, I believe it was. And we all fell asleep. And in the morning, everybody woke up, except for me. They found me face first in my vomit, completely blue, unresponsive, not breathing.
Wow.
And they rushed me to the hospital. Now, in the ambulance, my heart stopped. And, yeah, and they revived me with the paddles, and they got my heart to start beating again. But they rushed me to the ICU, and I spent about 3 weeks in a coma, completely unresponsive in ICU, fighting for my life.
3 weeks?
3 weeks, yes.
Wow.
Completely unresponsive to anything. I had no pain function. I had multi-organ failure. Um, my blood became toxic to my body. I had sepsis of the blood. My liver, my kidneys, my lungs, my heart, my brain, all were dysfunctional. My brain was frying. My limbs were getting all filled with fluids and swelling up from edema from all the toxins in my blood, and I was basically frying at the same time as dying from poison, that my blood was actually poisoning my body. And they told my parents that I was not going to make it, and if I did make it, I'd be a vegetable, and I'd never be the son they once knew. And about 3 weeks into my coma, they looked at my parents. They said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. He's not going to make it. You better make arrangements." So they got the priest. They actually baptized me in the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, and they baptized me. Then they read me my last rites, and just as all my family members were saying their goodbyes at the darkest hour of my life, I just woke up. I remember when I woke up and I see my mother and my little brother, my father, what I put them through. It was like the worst feeling of my life. I didn't even know what was going on, what was happening, but I could just see in their face that I did something so horrible and wrong, and I terribly, terribly hurt them, and I wouldn't wish that feeling on anybody, not even my worst enemy. And it took me a little while to realize what was going on, so I looked around the room, realized I was hooked to about 10 different machines. I couldn't talk. I had tubes in my throat. I had tubes in my chest. I had tubes in my lungs.
Yeah.
I had tubes everywhere. I was half the weight that I am today. I was skin and bones. I couldn't even move. I couldn't even tell my mother I was sorry. And I knew at this point I really messed up. I'd hear the doctors say things like, "I'm going to be completely brain dead. I'm going to lose all 4 of my limbs." And it was terrifying. And I couldn't even speak with anybody because I had tubes in my and they thought I was brain dead. And I'd see my mother and my father cry, and my little brother, he'd get really, really upset. And it was a really self-reflecting moment when I realized that I really messed up and I have to do something to change this around. So I remember praying every single night when everybody left, that praying to God that if I got through this, that I would make a difference. If I got one second chance, that I would make a difference in people's lives. And it didn't look too promising. At times I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to suffocate in the middle of my sleep, and I was never going to wake up again. And after about another month in ICU, conscious after the coma, the doctor came up to me. He said, "I have some good news and I have some bad news." He said, "The good news is I think you're okay. I think you're going to make it. The bad news is I think we're going to have to take your leg." Now I have this. I have a prosthetic leg that I have to put on every single morning. That reminds me of the mistakes that I made and the horrific things that I put my family and friends through. And at least it's, for me, it's a deterrent not to ever make those mistakes again. And live the right life and have a second chance. And believe it or not, at this point, I mean, I was an athlete my whole life, but I was actually thankful that I lost just my leg.
Yeah.
Just to put that in perspective, imagine being thankful for losing your leg.
Yeah.
And that's something that I cherished my whole life. I cherished being very competitive and athletic, and now I'm looking at a future without a leg. And it was a little scary, but I was actually thankful because I knew that I was going to survive.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the biggest ordeal that I had to go through. I had to learn how to breathe again on my own, which was really, really terrifying because my lungs were full of throw up from pneumonia, and it was they like ripped my lungs apart, and they had to scrape things out, but they had to retrain my lungs how to work again. So they would take me off of oxygen short periods of time throughout the night, and they'd leave me there, and I felt like I was suffocating during the night. It was like a torture session every single night.
Wow.
That was terrifying. I had to learn how to eat again, drink again, because I couldn't swallow. I had no functions in my body. I couldn't even move my arms. I had complete nerve damage in this wrist. It was complete atrophy and complete nerve damage and no muscle, nothing. And they said I was never going to be able to move my hand again. I wasn't able to move my left shoulder and my right hand. So I was kind of frightened about that. I lost my leg. I couldn't move one arm. The other hand didn't work. I lost a leg, and I had one foot that had terrible nerve damage that I couldn't even touch the tip of my foot. That's how painful it was. So I felt like I had not even one functional limb left in my life. And I went through all this. I learned how to walk again. I beat the odds on many different things. Although I went through all these physical issues and problems, although those were really difficult obstacles to surpass,
I'm
I feel
sure.
that, yeah, I feel that the mental and emotional obstacles that I had to overcome were way more horrific than anything
Mm.
that they could have done to me physically, because when I got out of the hospital, I was completely broken down. I was 25 years old. I I lost my limb. I lost all my confidence because I everything I knew about life was changed now.
Yeah.
Every friend that I ever had was a drug addict or a dealer, because that's what I put myself in at that point. And all the people that really did care about me had to eventually left me. So I was all alone, and I had to reinvent myself at 25 years old. I didn't have the same career. I didn't have the same goals. I didn't have the same skills. I wasn't even the actual physical person that I was before. I had to learn how to move my hand again, which took almost a year to learn how to move it again. They told me I was never going to be able to move my hand again. I would sit there every single day and stare at my hand and talk to my hand and tell it, listen, we've been doing this our whole lives. Move. Yeah, it was great. I looked like a crazy person in my house, staring and talking to my hand. But eventually I got my fingers to move. And when that started happening, I knew it was the first step to success. And I never gave up. And I eventually got my hand to move. And now I have about, I would say, 90% function of my hand, which is incredible in comparison to what they were telling me that was medically possible.
Yeah.
So I had to really reinvent myself. But what I noticed when I got out of the hospital, I went to college. I did great in college, although I was never really a school person. I had to learn how to adapt to my new situation and
Yeah.
standings. But what I noticed is everybody was dying around me. Everybody.
Hmm.
All these kids are getting hooked on heroin. They initially taking the pills, which was what I was doing, but they stopped giving out pills as irresponsibly as they did, and everybody went to heroin. And I was seeing my friends die left and right. Every single week, I'd hear another story about somebody that I grew up with that was dying. Every time I opened up the newspaper, I would hear terrible stories of people dying or losing their kids or their daughters or their mothers or fathers. And it was posted and pasted all over the news, all these terrible, horrific stories. And the stigma with addiction is that these people are junkies and they're horrible people and this, that, the third. It was just so negative.
Hmm.
So one day I was sick of hearing all this negative energy and all this stigma that was surrounded by addiction and addicts and all of this. And I wrote them my story, and I told them, and I wrote them my story about the things that I've learned and the obstacles that I surpassed, and how, although I lost my leg and all of these things, it made me a 10 times stronger person. The
Right.
fact that I've been able to inspire people around me in my life, although even if they didn't have the same exact problems or issues, we can all relate to one another on a struggling level. And I just tried to empower people that read the story. So I wrote the story to the news, and the guy was so impressed by the story. He asked me if he could publish it on the front page of the Sunday Advance, which I completely obliged. I thought that was a great idea, and they posted it on the front page. And then a few organizations and community uh, events reached out to me. A lot of opportunities came to me to speak, and I specifically partnered up with this lady Alicia Reddy, who runs the Addiction Angel community meetings, and she speaks at community events and boards, and we speak at the high schools, intermediate schools in Staten Island, and all over the place. We do the community Scared Straight programs once every season, and we really try to help these people out. And I realized how fulfilling it was, and actually how therapeutic it was for me, just in my recovery
Yep.
journey, to give back and to help people. And all the people that I've affected and influenced, people reach out on Facebook and Instagram and all of these different things. And even people that I know personally that reached out to me that needed help, that I got clean. Well, they got clean. I helped them and I guided them to get there. And the gratitude and the gratefulness that they have for having that opportunity and being able to share the strength to do something like that is just absolutely priceless. And I realized how important it is and how happy it makes me to help other people. And I feel if you have the capability, the the unique capability to help people in these kind of situations, then I feel like it's your duty to do it. I mean, there's not many people that can reach this specific audience of people the way that I can, and I don't want to let it go to waste. So I've been dedicating a lot of my time speaking and helping out people going through recovery or addicts trying to get clean, that need some coping mechanisms and to deal with society and learn how to assimilate to society, or just people that overdosed and had a really traumatic damage. And I realized that I really got to these people,
Yeah.
and I showed them a better way and a more uh, the light at the end of the tunnel, and show them what is possible if they just keep a positive attitude and keep on pushing and doing the right thing, and that life is so much better after you surpass these things. And I even started a little social media platform called We Are Recovery Warriors, because I want to empower these people in recovery. And it's a community where we're all going to collaborate. Eventually I'm going to get them, I'm going to do all kinds of activities and things to keep these people in recovery busy and have a network of friends that have that same passion and everything. Because I'm not really for I mean, it works for a lot of people, AA and NA and everything, but I feel
Right.
like that negative reinforcement, constantly talking about the bad times and the struggles and everything, is just it's just fighting from your knees all the time. And I want to tell people that go through it, that actually recover, that you are the strongest person that you've ever met in your life, because not many people can do what you have overcome. And that makes you 10 times stronger than a lot of people out there. Don't look at it as a weakness, look at it as a strength, because what you've gone through and what you've accomplished, not many people can do. So I consider these people warriors, and I think they should be empowered as much as they truly deserve. I really want to get the entire community behind it, whether it be sponsorships with baseball teams, basketball teams, softball teams, people that want to help and teach somebody a specific skill or whatever. They want to teach somebody to do this. Anybody can get involved. I want it to be like a volunteer-based community, and just to really empower each other and support each other, and 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 idle mind is the devil's playground. So if we can keep people busy and change their friends in um, their environment, I think they have a higher success rate to kick and stay in recovery and become the person that they deserve to be. I got certified as a public speaker and a life coach, so I can do one-on-one trainings or group trainings on these type of things, and also speak at events so I can reach more people. But when I do get the ball rolling and I do have the necessary support and resources to run this as a full um, resource community
Yeah.
for people in recovery, I'm going to get it up and running. But at the moment, I am just getting the followers and getting the support, and formulating who is willing to help and give to the cause. But it's definitely a work in progress. But I do coach people on the side, and I help them deal with their problems, whether it be addiction, whether it be traumatic things that they went through, or even life issues. I mean, it's all pretty much the same exact um, program, basically.
Program and process.
Yeah, it's the same process. That's the word that I was looking for. It's
Okay. When you talked about the process, what would you say the process will be, or what will be like the top three for someone going through it? Because you said it was not, the physical part was not as hard as the emotional and the mental part, right? So what would you say would be kind of the process?
There's a lot of stages to going through traumatic events. There's the first situation where you're in denial that it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
And then you get really, really angry and mad and depressed and sad and hopeless.
Mm.
And then you start to assimilate, and then you realize, well, this is the situation, and you have either two options. It's either fight or flight. Either you can just poor me, and try to stay away from it and become a victim, or take the circumstances that you're in and grab it by the horns and make the best possible that you can out of what you have. And I've noticed that when you grab life by the horns and you take charge of it, it empowers you. And then when you start making progress, it excites you. And then
Yes.
you start taking all this momentum and all of these hardships, and they make you a stronger person. You know, I mean, what like they say, what don't kill you makes you stronger. So when you go through a traumatic event and you surpass it with confidence and the utmost strength, you feel unstoppable. I mean, I feel like there's nothing in life that can take me down. They took my leg, they took my movement, they took my everything.
Yeah.
But they can't hold me down. And that's just the mentality you have to have when you go through a traumatic event, because life goes on regardless, whether you say poor me or you say that ain't nothing. No matter what, life always goes on. And you're better off having a positive mentality and motivated and ambitious and taking it as adversity and using it as a challenge than saying I need help and I'm a victim, because most people are just going to walk over you if you're in that situation. You know, there may be a few people that may help you out or be on your side, but for the most part, you're on your own. So,
Yep.
you know, the victim mentality does not serve anybody.
Absolutely. Taking responsibility for our lives, number one. And I don't know if you remember, you know, Tony Robbins saying life happens for you, not to you.
Yes.
I love that. So, Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Even with those 3 quick tips on, you know, the process of going through traumatic experiences. And like you said, taking it by the horns, right? That's the motto that you've been using.
Yeah.
So anything else before we go? Anything you'd like to share with us?
What I could say about specifically about addiction, or pretty much anything that anybody's ever going through, that you can't force somebody to do anything. They have to come to their self-realization point, whether it be any journey that you go on, whether it be addiction, whether it be a problem that you have, whether it be a spiritual journey. Nobody can tell you anything. You have to even in coaching. Like I learned, I'm a certified coach now. We did an example. We tried to teach somebody how to juggle. Now I know how to juggle, so I'm telling them the biomechanics of how to juggle. And this girl's looking at me like I'm crazy, and she's trying to follow my directions, and she can't do it. So what I did as a coach, I asked her, "What do you think you should do?" And then we slowly narrowed it down to let her come to the self-realization of how to juggle. You know, somebody can only guide you, but in actuality, you have to come down to that conclusion on your own, or else it won't be solidified in your heart or in your mind as definitively as it would be as if you figured it out yourself. So what I can say is if you have somebody that's struggling or dealing with somebody, you can always help them and guide them, but it just comes down to them, and they're going to have to want to do whatever they're trying to accomplish. That's pretty much what I can leave you at. And
yeah, I love it. No, absolutely. And I know it's especially when it comes to loved ones, it's harder, right? Because as a coach, you know, myself, I can absolutely do that with my clients. And when it comes like home, it's very different and it's challenging. So thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding others. You know, absolutely we have that will, and God gives us that choice. It's always about a choice. And that wraps up our time with action taker Kevin Parker. Check him out if you have any questions. His Facebook, we are Recovery Warriors, or you can check him out at Instagram. And as always, don't forget to leave your likes, comments for Kevin. Thank you.
I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops.